Hello, Star Trek fans. Welcome to ReBinge It. This is the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we are rebinging Star Trek Voyager from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 2, Episode 5, Non-Sequitur. This episode aired September 25th, 1995. Before we get into this one, anything to say about last week's sweaty episode, which was Elogium?
No, I'm just glad it was over.
Yeah, I'm glad it's over, and there's a lot less sweat in this episode, which is good. Much more Star Trek-y.
We're also back to Latin names. I know how much you like those.
At least I know what this one is.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually it's those names that I have to look up. That annoys me.
You're not a big fan of Latin.
I'm ambivalent about Latin. I just don't like it used as names of Star Trek episodes.
Ah.
Well, that's it for our interesting banter, obviously.
Yeah, we're done.
We just had 20 seconds of silence on the recording.
You know, we're only like a year away at this point until First Contact comes out.
Oh, well...
If my dates are correct.
Somehow, Voyager won't know anything about what's going on with the Borg.
Yeah, and they don't even know about the pending Dominion War.
True, they don't know about that, and they don't know about the Borg Queen.
Yeah,
but they know about the Borg. Well, again, we've hit dead air, so is it time to get started on this episode?
Well, I guess we better start talking about the episode then.
All right. In the cold open, Harry appears to be sleeping in his bed, and he's hearing Janeway's voice. She's saying, "Voyager to shuttlecraft Drake, prepare for emergency transport." And then we hear her say, "Harry." But then another voice also says Harry, kind of over the top of it. And this voice is coming from a woman in bed with Harry. He turns over to look at her, and it's Libby, the girlfriend that we know he left behind on Earth.
Yep.
He's quite confused by this, and it's only made worse when he turns around and he looks out of the window and he sees he's in San Francisco. And we cue the theme song.
One of those straight to the point Star Trek opening, no messing around.
Yeah, I really like that kind of an opener for sure. So this is a good one.
It is funny how when he looks out the window, there's like one very lonely shuttle flying past.
There's only so much they could pay for.
You know, I would expect a future San Fran with Starfleet HQ based right there for the city to look something like the Coruscant scenes from the Phantom Menace with just vehicles everywhere and just all the stuff going on. But I guess those effects are kind of expensive then. Yeah,
looking back on it, when you see what an advanced society looks like on Star Trek, it pretty much looks like it looked in the 90s, except maybe a little bit cleaner, and there aren't any cars, right?
Yes.
But otherwise, it's pretty much the same. There's not a lot of frills that they put into it. It changes quite a bit now with a more modern technology, and I'm sure as we go forward, it'll continue to do that. Like I think about in Picard, for example, the use of transporters right in the street.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That was pretty cool. And that's here. It's nothing. It's like, oh, we're in a little village.
Right.
You know, when he gets outside. Well, after the opening credits, Harry is very confused. And unfortunately, at this point, I have some very bad news. The actress playing Libby is really reminding me of the actress who played Sisko's wife, Jennifer, in a few episodes of Deep Space Nine.
Oh, dear.
She is, shall we say, wooden in this role. She is not great. I'm sure she's a lovely person, and she's probably good in other things, but she is not good in this.
So was she in any soap operas worthy of mention?
You know, I didn't recognize her, but I looked her up on IMDb, and she was actually in several soap operas. She was in The Young and the Restless, of course, because that's where we get so many people. She was also in The Guiding Light and Days of Our Lives, which are not ones that I watch consistently.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a lot of credits before this Voyager episode. She does have a handful of them, but she's got a number of credits after, so hopefully she got better. But this is not her finest work, is what I'm going to say.
Okay.
Libby gets Harry out of bed and tells him to get dressed because he has the most important meeting of his career today, which, by the way, is a pretty short career, as we learned. It's been 8 months. I would argue every meeting is like the most important meeting in the first 8 months.
Yeah.
Harry puts on his uniform, and he's still in a bit of a daze, you know, by where he is and what is happening.
Very hungover.
He asks about the date and learns that the date is 49011, which makes him say, oh, This is the present, not the past.
And here I feel we miss the smartphones or the watch of, couldn't he ask them, what's the date?
Yeah, there's none of that.
I know I talked about this in Deep Space Nine, but it is sort of funny, some of the technology that seems to be missed in these views of the future.
Yeah. And they've changed it quite a bit again in modern Star Trek, right? There's more of a focus on video. That was just something that didn't exist in the 90s.
Yeah.
Harry wonders if he's dreaming or on a holodeck or maybe he's hallucinating. The last thing he remembers was he was piloting a shuttle on the way back to Voyager. Libby doesn't seem terribly concerned about these things that he's saying and seems to think he's maybe just goofing around. But she does get a bit irked when he mentions Voyager because she doesn't think he should be making jokes about that ship when they just had a memorial service for his friend Danny only 2 months ago.
Could be dark humor.
How could it be only 2 months ago if this is present day?
They might have waited 6 months, right, to make sure that they can't find Voyager and then held the memorial.
So they declared him dead like 6 months later or something? Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Although I wonder, too, if maybe, again, this is in a weird order, how they're airing the episodes.
Oh, I see what you mean.
But he does say later he's 8 months out of the academy. So really it should be 8 months after Voyager took off.
This should be, yeah.
Yes.
But that wouldn't affect when the memorial service was.
Not if they waited, like you said, several months to declare it gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Libby is pushing for Harry to leave for work, apparently unconcerned that her boyfriend is having some kind of mental break.
She just wants him out of the apartment, I think, is the main thing.
I think so.
Harry, go and do something.
Yeah, maybe she's having friends over. I don't know. Harry heads outside and he's looking around the street where there are, I don't know if you saw this, but there are signs saying Mission District, August 14th, which is my birthday, of course. I say, of course, for the two people on this call, not for the people listening. Harry wanders around a bit, eventually being shouted at by a guy from a coffee shop on the corner who brings him his Vulcan Mocha Extra Sweet, which sounds absolutely disgusting to have a mocha and make it extra sweet.
Yeah, that's a recurring theme, I think, on this podcast. Sweet coffees are disgusting.
Yeah, we did talk about that a lot because Miles, right? Didn't he have extra sweet coffee or someone?
Yeah, awful.
I still don't understand. Why would Vulcans need mochas? I think they would need the bare minimum of nutrients.
Because they enjoy the taste. Oh, wait a minute.
No, they can't enjoy it.
That's just what they tell people.
Sugar would be entirely illogical.
Right. Why would sweetness help the drink?
Yeah, I guess that's the American spin. They took a Vulcan coffee, turned it into a mocha, and then added more sugar.
That's a good point. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds like something we would do.
Yeah.
Now, the Klingons having the Ractogino, that makes sense. That I get. Except it's going to be super bitter because they're going to be proud about how bitter it is.
This Ractogino is barely drinkable. Excellent.
Exactly. I had 5 of them.
Nobody drinks more than 3. Nobody can drink more than 3.
Oh, yeah. Well, this guy who seems to be running the coffee shop also knows Harry has some big meeting today. He says, big day, you know, the meeting about the new ship you're designing. Harry asks the guy how long he's been coming to this coffee shop, and the guy says, since he left the academy 8 months ago.
So he's Mr. Exposition.
Yeah. The coffee shop guy tells Harry that he's engaged to Libby, which is a surprise to Harry. Like, I'm sorry, what?
It's a surprise.
And now Harry sets down his coffee without drinking it when another guy in a yellow Starfleet uniform grabs him and says, let's go, we have to get to headquarters. Harry says he isn't feeling well and thinks maybe he should just go home, but this other guy says, oh, you just have a case of the jitters.
In this version of San Francisco, why is a Marlon Brando lookalike running the coffee shop?
They just said, show me what a person from Earth looks like. Oh, it's Marlon Brando. Okay, now you look like that. Now we go to Starfleet headquarters, and we're sitting at a table of captains and admirals.
Oh, yeah. And in comes Admiral Hayes.
Who's Admiral Hayes?
The guy sitting in the middle.
But how do you know it's Admiral? Do we know him from something?
Yeah. First contact. Catch you at a bad time, John Luke?
Oh, really? That's him?
Yep.
No memory of it.
And he also played a Romulan.
Yeah, that I believe.
And he also played a Bolian. And I think he played a couple of other places as well.
I recognize him as the Bolian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, don't get attached to him because he doesn't make it out of the first, I think, 10 minutes of first contact.
Oh. Well, he makes it out of this episode, so it's okay. So the other Starfleet guy tells Harry to relax. He says, if this goes well, you'll walk out of here a lieutenant. That made me laugh. It's like, I don't think you know Harry very well.
Yeah.
He asks to see Harry's warp coil schematic, but of course, Harry has no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And we finally learn that this guy's name is Lieutenant Lasco, and it seems that he and Harry have invented something to do with utilizing tetrion plasma for the warp nacelles on a runabout that they've called, or somebody has called, Yellowstone.
And he's figured out all the problems of how to get around the limitations. So I think it's demonstrating that Harry is really pretty good. I mean, not just good, but Zephyr and Cochrane level good.
We have some technobabble, but pretty quickly we run into a problem with Harry having absolutely no idea what is going on in this meeting, even though he's supposed to be the expert.
This was so painful. Poor Harry. Imagine being dropped into that situation and just being like, excuse me, I have no idea what's going on here.
It's like that nightmare where you all of a sudden have to take a test in high school and you realize at that moment that you haven't been studying and you have no idea what even the category is.
My former teachers would say that was pretty much me with all tests anyway.
Oh, so that's not a nightmare that you have.
No.
Oh, I have that nightmare all the time.
That was called reality.
Oh my gosh. I do think Harry could have tried a little harder to get out of this meeting. I mean, it's clear you're not prepared. You have no idea what's going on. There's only two of you. You're not going to be able to sit there silently. You could have postponed it before this all happened.
Yeah. I think the idea Harry is just thrown so for a loop here.
Yeah.
That he's just in complete reaction mode of, I have no idea what's happening. And he allowed, his colleague to basically pull him around. Because he is just, what on earth is happening? I am just lost.
And it's not the first time it's happened. I mean, remember when he got pulled into that other reality?
Oh, yes. Yeah, first time he died.
On the asteroid with the dead people. Yeah.
Asteroid of death. So maybe that's the thing. Harry is just going, what is it this time?
Just go with it. Yeah. Well, finally he does ask to put the meeting off because he's ill. So the only admiral with any lines is like, okay, well, I'm off to the Cardassian border for 3 weeks, so it'll have to wait a while. And he leaves. A very annoyed Lieutenant Lasco says to Harry, you'd better be dying. And then he leaves. Oh, that made me laugh.
I thought the Cardassian border was 6 weeks away.
Well, then he'll be gone for 6 weeks plus 3 weeks plus 6 weeks. It's going to be a long wait. Harry makes his way to his office and he sees some of his work saying, I guess I'm pretty good. And there's a picture of himself and Libby on his desk. He sits down and he asks the computer to display his service record and he starts reading about himself and he sees that he had requested to be transferred to Voyager, but the transfer was denied.
Yeah.
And instead, he was approved to join the Starfleet Engineering Corps as a starship design specialist.
Overanalysis. So Harry has these warp field calculations and this design work all done. Wouldn't you want to look at your own work and go, oh, hey, look all this stuff I figured out.
Yeah.
It could be helpful for them on Voyager.
Yeah, he's too dazed.
Or on top of that, just realizing what you've already discovered.
Right.
It's like the joke in whichever movie it was where Scotty gives the guy
the transparent aluminum.
Yeah. How'd you know he didn't invent it? It would be the same kind of thing here. This would be useful. I'd be wanting to read what I'd done.
Yeah, you would. I believe that. We also learned that he won a Cochrane Award for outstanding advances in warp theory, which I have to say seems unlikely in only a few months because it takes time to put together a whole award process and a fancy dinner to give it out. I just don't think he's going to get that in 8 months, but they're just trying to say he's a brilliant engineer.
Yeah, I would go with that maybe this is the point of if Harry had gone into this, he wouldn't just be a brilliant engineer. He'd be, like I said, Zephyr and Cochrane level.
Yeah, he may have missed his actual calling.
Yeah. Instead, he's getting kidnapped and murdered in the Delta Quadrant.
With no girlfriend.
Yeah.
Hanging out with Tom.
She's already moved on.
Oh, definitely. With that Lasco guy. He asks the computer about any recent temporal anomalies trying to explain what's going on, but there aren't any recorded.
Yeah.
He asks about Voyager and finds that he needs security clearance in order to see any info about it. So he uses his own clearance to get access. And now he's looking at the crew manifest, which, by the way, it shouldn't work.
Right.
His credentials, it doesn't make any sense that his credentials would work.
Yeah. Why would somebody have created credentials for Harry if he hadn't been assigned to the ship?
I think it's because people don't understand what credentials are. And the credentials would be unique to the individual. They're not just like a password you get when you get onto a ship.
Yeah.
Say, the password is 1234. Don't tell anyone.
Hang on. Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's the password? Well, it's your name and 1234.
Oh my God. So he just used Chakotay, 1234.
Exactly.
He finds that his friend Danny Bird was the operations officer instead of himself. And then he leaves the office to head home, but he can't remember where he lives. So he asks the coffee shop guy where he lives.
Oh.
The guy doesn't seem to find anything strange in that, that Harry has no idea where he lives. And he tells him not to worry. He says everything's going to be fine. But when Harry walks off, the coffee shop guy does look a little bit worried.
Yes. Yeah. I thought that was funny. I mean, the guy covered really well going, "Are you playing a trick on me, Harry?"
Right.
There's an undercurrent in this episode that Harry is a bit of this version of Harry, in this environment, is a bit of a joker or a trickster. There seems to be the reaction, like with his fiancée and with Cosimo, that maybe Harry is something of a practical joker.
Okay, I didn't really pick that up, but I can see where you're coming from. And you called the coffee shop guy Cosimo. This is actually where we learn that, because we see on the door of the coffee shop, it says Cosimo's, which is a very funny play on words. And then he also says, like, "Are you trying to trick Cosimo or something?"
Yeah.
Now we go back to Harry's apartment, and Libby is confused as to why he's home, and she asks what happened today, and he gives a pretty vague answer. And why is she home in the middle of the day and in a towel? What is her job anyway? Is she a towel model? He asks Libby...
Remember that bit you said earlier about maybe she has friends over?
Maybe she's a content creator, or it's her OnlyFans page or something. Poor Harry, he has no idea.
Oh, dear.
He asks Libby to pretend that they haven't seen each other for months, and she does, thinking that it's just something cute.
Yep.
And then they end up making out, and they have a very G-rated sexy time. It's quite funny. In the middle of the night, Harry gets up and starts asking the computer more questions. He's going through the classified crew list on Voyager, and he realizes that Tom Paris isn't listed either.
Yes.
And he learns that Tom was convicted of treason, just like he was in the other timeline, and he was paroled, and his last known whereabouts are in Marseille, France.
Yep. It was also cute the way his clarinet was there.
Oh, yeah.
Which didn't make it to Voyager in time before they left.
Right.
And it was sort of, one of those pieces of home.
Yeah, and it's just on display. Maybe they don't have dust in the future, but you'd keep that in a case. It's going to get covered in dust.
They have a dusting robot.
God, that would be the greatest invention, to have a dusting robot.
Oh, yeah.
Libby wakes up asking what he's doing, and Harry covers, saying he's just catching up on some work. But Libby does say he's been acting strange all day, and Lieutenant Lasco called her to say that he's never seen Harry so agitated. Again, okay.
That was Harry agitated?
And I wouldn't describe his behavior at Starfleet as agitated. Well, I also think two things. One, using the word agitated in this context does not help this poor woman trying to act. It is really bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound right. I would be quite suspicious if somebody I worked with called up my girlfriend or boyfriend or husband and said, "Oh, your spouse, whatever, is agitated." I mean, what are you doing? It's weird.
Well, maybe the part they're leaving out is maybe they're actually all close friends.
Harry says he can't explain it right now, and he just needs her to trust him. And he says it's going to sound crazy, but he doesn't belong here, and he's not who she thinks he is.
Are you a changeling?
So she thinks he's having second thoughts about getting married, but he says he's from another reality. And this here, to me, it's something that is so common in Star Trek. It's funny that people just don't believe that it could ever happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
She does make a good point here of perhaps he is having some kind of mental health problem.
Yeah. I mean, that's legitimate.
I mean, that is completely valid.
Yes. And she suggests that he see a counselor or a neurologist, which I thought was smart.
This is one of those things I feel like, wouldn't you want to, if you like, force Harry to go to Starfleet Medical, or you'd call Starfleet Medical, because what if there's a risk? He's been working on these warp engines.
Yeah.
He's been doing this research or whatever. What happened if he got exposed to something?
Yeah.
Which has actually caused neurological damage as part of his work.
Yeah.
An actual real health problem.
Yeah. It's even funny when he says that he's ill and nobody asks him, like, well, what's wrong with you? Or can we get you a doctor? No, they're just like, oh, okay. I mean... Yes.
Yeah, can we get his replacement sorted out just in case he dies?
But it would be good for him to think, I should go and get my head scanned or something to make sure everything's okay.
From my perspective, if your partner was suddenly behaving in this way, in this more evolved society, I think you would want to get them help.
Right away, yeah. And you can probably even run some scans without telling them.
Yeah.
Or, you know...
Oh, is that ethically questionable?
Maybe not. Maybe that's a paper he had to sign when he said he was going to work at Starfleet headquarters. You know what I mean?
You have to be checked for being replaced by a changeling.
Well, yeah, because by this point, we know about the changelings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Harry says he will go to see a counselor or a neurologist, but first he says, I have to go to Marseille to see Paris. And she's like, what? I thought that was really funny. Another play on words.
Yeah, it's a different city.
So off we go to the real bar from Tom's holodeck program, and we find Tom Paris dressed in civilian clothes with scruffy hair and a 5 o'clock shadow.
Yep, playing pool.
He is the most unbelievable scruffy character. Nothing about this person is scruffy.
He's a really well-dressed bar deadbeat.
Well, yeah, he's really quite well-behaved, and he's drinking his little drink. I mean, I don't know, it's very funny. He's very civilized. Tom has no idea who Harry is, of course, and he says he never set foot on Voyager.
How did he get there?
What?
Oh, they met Voyager at Deep Space Nine. Never mind.
Yeah, because remember, he didn't come to Deep Space Nine on Voyager. He came on some other kind of shuttle that he was harassing the woman pilot.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He does say that Captain Janeway had recruited him, but he got as far as Deep Space Nine, where he got into a bar fight with a Ferengi, and he was thrown in the brig by a very unpleasant shapeshifter.
Odo just doing his job.
First of all, Quark is not getting into a bar fight with anybody. That doesn't make any sense.
And no.
And secondly, it's not called the brig, right? On the station. It's only a brig on a ship.
Yeah. I thought there was just the holding cells on the station.
But I guess he's drunk, so maybe he's getting it all mixed up.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anyway, Janeway tried to get him released, but his parole was revoked by Starfleet, so Voyager left without him. Harry tries to convince him that that's not what happened by recounting the story as he remembers it, and this confuses Tom. Harry says this is going to sound crazy, but you and I were on Voyager, but something happened and reality has been changed. Harry wants Tom to come with him to Starfleet headquarters and write a simulation of what happened on the shuttle he was on. And Tom finds this very funny, as he has no intention of setting foot inside of Starfleet headquarters, and he assumes this is some kind of trap.
Yeah.
So Tom says Harry is starting to annoy him, so Harry's disappointed and says that he sees Tom now as just a loser and a drunk.
Oh.
And Tom takes a swing at him, a drunk Tom, so he misses.
Yep.
Harry easily gets the upper hand, and he just leaves without throwing a punch. But weirdly, after he leaves, we see Cosimo sitting at the bar.
Oh, I thought it was Marlon Brando in a beret.
No, he's sitting there eavesdropping.
This was a really fascinating scene because we bring up so many things here. Because the Tom that Harry knows says he didn't know what would happen to him if Janeway hadn't offered him this job.
Yeah. Here's what would happen.
Yeah.
He's just hanging out in a bar,
right?
Drinking and playing pool.
Yeah, he's just turned into a bar drunk.
He doesn't even seem slightly drunk.
He can hold his booze.
Yeah, apparently.
And on top of that, I found it funny that Janeway couldn't get Tom sprung. I mean, she'd gone and recruited him to do this mission. They needed that inside intel.
Right.
He's already a known troublemaker.
And he's already there.
I can't see how Janeway wouldn't be able to pull enough strings to get him on Voyager, seeing as he was important to the mission.
Yeah. Well, doesn't Tom have an admiral father?
Yeah.
Maybe the admiral was like, no.
Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, that's true.
But I agree. It does seem a little silly. Really, what might have happened is that cranky Odo or Cisco wouldn't let him go without being charged or something.
Yeah.
And Voyager had to leave. Maybe that's what happened?
Yeah, but this was a serious mission.
And you know what? Then, without Tom, I wonder if Voyager was destroyed.
Oh, well, without Harry as well.
It might not be in the Delta Quadrant. It might be exploded.
Yeah.
Well, back to the apartment with Libby, and Harry arrives to find Starfleet security knows he's been breaking into confidential files using forged access codes.
Yep.
Harry's like, I didn't forge anything.
It was just password 1234.
But he goes with these security dudes. Now we are meeting with the same admiral from earlier. I guess either his Cardassian trip was postponed or, I don't know, it went really quickly.
He was just telling a story. He just wanted to get out the meeting.
Harry tells the admiral that he didn't forge security protocols because he was serving on Voyager when it was lost in the Delta Quadrant. And for some inexplicable reason, Lieutenant Lasco is sitting at the table with the admiral. This makes no sense.
Maybe this was more informal. Maybe this guy Lasco has more sway and convinced the admiral, let's not do this formally. Can we just talk to him? Let's not charge him. He's my friend. He's been a good colleague. Maybe this was the first approach they were taking.
But they sent Starfleet security to get him.
Well, it's still a security issue. So...
Oh, okay, good point.
Yeah. Maybe in this interview, Lasco is thinking they're going to find out, Harry's having some kind of incident here.
Well, ultimately, Lasco tells Harry that his story is impossible to believe because there's no evidence.
And
I would argue his working security protocols are evidence.
His inside information about Voyager. If he went and talked about all the things he knows about Voyager, it'd be like, how do you know these things?
Right.
Plus, I find it strange how somebody like Admiral Hayes, an experienced Starfleet officer, hasn't run into this kind of thing all the time.
Exactly. I do think it's funny that no one thinks it's even possible what Harry is saying.
You could have a checklist of parallel universe Harry replaced with a changeling. You could just go through the list.
That's something they would do on lower decks.
Yes. Transporter duplicate. It seemed like the kind of guy it would happen to. Considering how many crazy things happen in Star Trek, that must be part of official reports or on record, you'd almost have to take these crazy things at face value and do some research into them.
Agreed.
How do you know Q isn't messing with the timeline again? He enjoys doing that kind of thing for fun.
Right.
There is another explanation. Admiral Hayes. Admirals are always evil.
Maybe he's a shapeshifter. Well, Lieutenant Lasco does suggest maybe Harry is an alien or his mind has been altered. The Admiral asks why he went to Marseille, France to meet with Tom Paris.
Yeah.
Harry says he wanted Tom to help him figure out how to get back. Finally, Harry realizes that they're accusing him of working with the Maquis, so he finally demands legal counsel. So they put an ankle bracelet on him and say they're going to monitor his every move, and he's not to leave the planet or tamper with the bracelet or the anklet.
Yeah, they got him in an ankle bracelet.
Yeah, now Harry is walking through the street with this giant bracelet on his ankle when he runs into Cosimo, and Cosimo tells Harry he was sent here to watch him and make sure that he was all right, but it's clear to him that he isn't all right. And it's like, oh. When Harry asks who he is, he says, we exist in what you would call a temporal inversion fold in the space-time matrix. Quite a mouthful.
So they're aliens outside of time. Are you prophets?
Yeah, I wondered that too, although they didn't seem to have any control over anything.
Yeah.
He says there was an accident and Harry's shuttle interrupted one of their time streams and it caused some history and some events to be scrambled. And he says they only know an accident occurred and they don't know how or why.
What was crazy in this scene is the way Cosimo is being really pleasant and kind of laughing about it and really funny. It's like, oh, we just blew up your entire timeline and history and altered reality. No big deal. These things kind of happen. He was so sort of nonchalant.
Very casual.
Yeah. I was looking at history and found this guy, Marlon Brando, and I thought, hey, that's a good look.
Harry insists on knowing where this time stream is, and Cosimo tells him he could recreate the conditions of the accident and fly back into the time stream, but there's no guarantee he'll end up in the right time. But Harry feels that he has to go back. Cosmo's like, this place seems pretty good. Why do you want to leave? And he says, maybe this is your fate. But Harry says, well, what about Danny? He wasn't so lucky. And fate wasn't so kind to Tom Paris. He says it just isn't supposed to be this way.
And I feel kind of bad for Libby.
Yeah, nobody mentions Libby.
Yeah. I do like how they gave this guy the name Cosimo, like a play on Cosmos. I thought that was a nice touch there. The other thing is, I think these guys don't seem very omnipotent. They seem kind of powerful, but they don't seem to have the answers. I wonder if they're just like kind of normal people and they don't really look at time the same way. And this is just like, oh, this is an accident. We're trying to fix things. Things have changed now, but, hey, it looks pretty good for you.
They give no indication that these aliens are powerful at all.
Yeah.
Because he just says, well, and then an accident happened, and then something else happened, and here you are.
Yeah. Somebody dropped the spanner, and you're here.
Oh, well. It's always funny to me when we start preaching about preserving timelines in Star Trek, because I always think, how do you know which one is the right one? You don't know. Maybe the one you were in was the wrong one, and you actually crashed into the timeline you were supposed to be in.
Maybe I'll go into overanalysis now, because this is one of my points of this race seems to have no problem altering the timeline.
Right.
Its actions causing a complete change in how events happened. Is this happening all the time? Is the reality that Starfleet exists in, that humans exist, constantly being just torn apart, reassembled, modified from like moment to moment.
Maybe.
Because it really gives the impression of, is this happening all the time?
That's funny. Well, yeah, then I don't know what you're trying to get back to.
Right.
I mean, you could still be friends with Tom. You know, it just might take some time, but he doesn't want his friend to be dead. I mean, that's, I think, literally why they threw that in there.
Right.
So that he had something to feel bad about.
I just find this whole thing just sort of fascinating.
Yeah.
Or headcanon time. Are these just branching parallels? Is this Worf and parallels? This is just one of the lives Harry could have left, which arguably makes things even worse because when he gets back to his own parallel, the other Harry's disappeared.
You know, this kind of implies that it's not a parallel.
Yeah.
That this is just a different timeline completely.
Yeah.
That didn't exist before, which sort of flies in the face of some of the other things that happen in Star Trek. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't think it's a parallel. I think we changed the timeline.
These aliens give me the sense that they don't necessarily really understand these things. It's just stuff that happens.
And they don't care. He's like, I'm just going to sit here and make coffee.
Yeah. They care enough to try and keep an eye on Harry, but what's the purpose of that? Is that for Harry's benefit or theirs? To smooth over their moral conscience. You know, we tried to look after him.
Well, I think the point is, if Harry can fit in there and adapt, they're just going to go about their business.
Yeah.
But if he couldn't, then this is what was going to happen, this conversation.
Oh, gotcha.
And he was going to say, well, here's what happened, sorry. You probably can't get back to your time, but if you want to try, here are the coordinates of where the time stream intersects with this region of space, so good luck, right? That's how this scene ends with him doing that. So I'm thinking maybe that was it. He was just sent there to see if there would be a right time when he would have to go, okay, this isn't working.
Interesting.
I'll give him the option of being able to try to get back.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if he ends up in the wrong time, he's going to screw up time in a different way.
But like you said, maybe they don't, they don't care that much.
They don't seem to care, but maybe they understand that humans care.
Yeah.
The humanoids care, but they don't care because maybe they are prophets.
The prophets like to mess with things a lot.
Yes, that's true. Well, now Harry is trying to get the ankle bracelet off when Libby comes in and asks what he's doing. He says he wants to get back to where he belongs, and she continues to be just terrible. I mean, this is the worst. This is the you're breaking my heart scene. It's so bad.
Oh, dear. Yes. Yeah, this was not one of the great performances.
Well, she says, if you were really Harry, you wouldn't be trying so hard to get away from me. Which is it's not a terrible line, but it is not delivered well.
It does make me feel bad for the character of Libby. All of a sudden, something's gone very badly wrong with your fiancé.
Yeah, that would suck. Well, Harry says he wants to stay with her, but he just can't. And then the tampering alarm finally goes off on his ankle bracelet.
Yes.
Harry promises Libby he'll do everything he can to get back to her. And then when some security dudes beam in, he runs to the window and climbs out onto the fire escape, which is so funny. You shouldn't need to chase. Just beam somewhere else. Just beam out. Just beam out to the other side. But instead, what happens is Libby stands in front of the window, and that somehow seems to block these two security guards from being able to go outside.
Right, you have communicators, you have transport. This guy is potentially a Starfleet inside spy for the Marquis.
Right.
And you only send 2 guys.
No. And why don't they just beam Harry?
Because you can't have a chase scene if you do that.
I guess so.
But it is Harry and he's smart, so maybe he set up a disrupting field so that you can't beam him. In which case, why didn't you set it over the whole apartment?
Yeah, I was going to say, then they wouldn't have been able to beam in. Yeah. So I don't know about that. Well, a chase ensues, and Harry knocks one of the guys out, but the other chases him down and catches him eventually in the mean streets of San Francisco.
Yes, those are very mean streets there.
Yeah, but before the guy can arrest Harry, Tom appears to save the day and knocks the other security guy out.
And he seems to be sober, which is a plus.
That's true. And they take the phaser from the security guy and they run away, and nobody there does anything. They're all like, oh, what's going on?
Not getting involved.
When Harry asks what Tom is doing there, Tom says, helping out a friend. Oh, see, he could stay here and he's got a friend. It'd be fine.
Well, this is the second time he's had an impact on Tom.
They're soulmates, these two.
Maybe it's because Harry's idealism rubs off on Tom. Tom isn't as a character, Tom isn't necessarily the bad guy. Tom, I feel, is a character who's acting up because of what we learn later of his background and his upbringing. And Tom is, I guess would call him a reluctant rebel and almost sort of self-destructive to an extent.
In a mild way, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm serious when I say they're soulmates. Sometimes two people just click, and they complement each other in the right ways. Doesn't have to be romantic. It's just they just work together.
Maybe that's part of it. Harry just speaks to a part of Tom that's positive.
Well, Tom says he doesn't know if he believes Harry, but it sounds better than the life that he has here. And he tells Harry that they better keep moving. But, they never disable that ankle bracelet or shoot it off of him or anything because they could still use that to just beam Harry away.
My guess is Harry's already disabled it.
Okay, so that was the implication at the beginning, was that he actually broke it or disabled it?
Yeah.
So Harry's plan is to get onto the runabout that he and Lasco were working on and break it out of space dock. He says he can access it from his office somehow. I don't know, some technobabble. So Tom pulls out a site-to-site transporter device and they beam to Harry's office.
Tom has some useful friends.
He does. So they beam right into Harry's office, and Harry works quickly to bypass the runabout security lockouts or something. And then they beam away just as security arrives to shoot them. And now in the runabout, we very quickly hear an intruder alert sound. But don't worry, we managed to get out of space dock just before the doors shut on us.
Oh, that was some great effect. I love this whole space escape where the doors are closing and they manage to get out.
Yeah.
Apparently they don't have any tractor beams.
Security is so lax at Starfleet. It is very funny.
This was good. And I like how he brings up with Tom that he was the best pilot he knew.
Yeah.
A nod to Harry knows what Tom's potential is.
Right. Now we hear a Nebula-class starship is following them, but we get absolutely no visual of this happening. Harry says they're going to do everything they can to stop us because they think we're trying to steal this prototype.
Yes.
Yeah, because you just stole the prototype.
Yeah, you could have taken just a normal shuttle.
Yeah. Pretty quickly, shields are down to 29% as the ship keeps firing at them.
Yeah, and they're starting to lose containment because they hadn't actually finished building the ship.
Yeah, and somehow there's nothing moving outside the window, and it looks like they are really just on a set and not going anywhere.
It's a nice set. It's actually kind of a big shuttle. Normally they're tiny.
Yeah, because it's a runabout.
Yeah.
We have a lot of trouble and a lot of technobabble as the ship keeps firing at them, and they figure out that they can vent the plasma from the warp nacelles and slow down the other ship for a few seconds. That gives them just enough time to get to the coordinates where Harry quickly recreates the conditions of his accident. But nothing happens.
I really like that. They did that whole Star Trek build-up that normally pays off. And Tom just flies through and says, nothing's happened.
Well, that didn't work.
Yes. Perfect. That was a great setup.
Harry does realize that Janeway called for an emergency transport at the time of the accident, but he's really worried about a core breach happening and killing Tom, so he's trying to fix that before he tries beaming away. But Tom realizes there's no time, and he shoves Harry onto the transporter pad.
Yes.
And he says, if this works, we'll both be back on Voyager. Harry beams away, and the runabout immediately explodes.
I like that. Tom basically being selfless for his friend. And I guess for himself.
Yeah, for himself, because he's thinking maybe life is better there.
Yeah.
But this has happened before on Star Trek and probably in other shows about messing with time. The person has this sort of selfless moment of, well, I'll be okay in the other timeline. It's like, realistically, I don't think that's what happens because self-preservation doesn't cross timelines in that way. It's like you're still trying to keep yourself alive.
I'm going to say it works for Tom because of that self-destructive aspect of him.
Right. Well, maybe. Yeah, maybe he had a few shots before they got on the runabout.
Harry, do you have a liquor cabinet in your office? I just want to take a couple of bottles or something.
Yep.
Calm my nerves.
Little liquid courage.
Yeah.
Well, Harry finally is back in his time, as far as he knows.
Yeah.
On the Voyager shuttle, and Janeway tells him to shut down his shields. We have some technobabble as Janeway suggests using the deflector array to extend the reach of the transporter, because she says really dramatically, he's just out of reach.
Remember what I said about the deflector? There's so many things you can use it for.
Yeah. They manage to get Harry back just as his shuttle blows up, of course, and everyone is relieved.
And they lose another shuttle.
Yep, that's my next note. One more shuttle gone.
Yeah, another one.
I do love how people are within seconds of dying all the time, and we just go, phew, that was close, and then we never talk about it again.
Oh.
Like, how much trauma do these people have?
Hey, I've said it a million times. How does Picard sleep at night?
Well, we found out not very well.
And Mulgrew in this scene is great because when they're building up to this and they're using the deflector and the whole transport, the way she seems so tense, like this coiled spring.
Yeah.
And then when she gets the message of like, we've got him. And the way she just, you see that release of tension. And it's a really great piece of physical acting.
Yeah.
You really feel that.
Yeah. She's really good.
I think that's why she so gets this character of Janeway.
Yeah, there's something about her where she's just so good at being completely serious and in the moment of the character. Like, as ridiculous as the show is, she is really into it.
Yeah.
Although this, too, though, the way she's like, oh, he's alive? All right, I'm going to my office. She doesn't, like, go check on him. Or she just is like, I got to go get a coffee. I'm out of here.
Yeah, I'm getting some tea.
Oh, yeah, if you were British, you'd have to put the kettle on.
Right.
Well, now Harry comes to the bridge, and Chakotay says, we think your shuttlecraft was caught in some kind of temporal anomaly. And Harry's like, back off, dude. That might work with the ladies. No, I'm just kidding. That's from Scrooge. Harry says, no duh, dude, and sort of walks past him to get to Tom. Harry pats Tom on the back and says, I owe you one. And then he walks away, leaving Tom very confused.
Yep.
The end. All right, overanalysis. Go.
Okay. I find it kind of sad that nobody believes Harry.
That is sad.
When this kind of stuff happens all the time, they're like, yeah, Harry, we think you've just gone crazy.
Yes, it's almost silly that they don't even entertain the idea that it's possible.
Yeah.
But if they don't believe it's possible, then let's treat the mental health issue and not just put an ankle bracelet on him and send him back out into the world.
Right.
We've talked about it before that the treatment of mental health conditions it's very 90s focused.
Yeah.
It's certainly not modern in terms of what it would be like today, but, well, that's not true. It probably would be a lot like that today. But in the future of Star Trek, it just seems very old school.
Right.
It's like, oh, dude, you crazy.
Yeah. The only thing I could think of is maybe the Admiral is so obsessed with, we've got a threat from the Changelings. We've got a threat from the Marquis. Maybe Harry is actually a spy for the Marquis. So he's discounting everything else and going, oh, it's a cover for a spy.
Well, yeah, I suppose the reason is that he went to see Tom. That really screwed it up, yeah.
Yeah, so that set the Admiral's mind on what was happening rather than looking at the possibilities.
And we do go back to the, can we really be tracking what everybody does thing? And the answer is yes, we can.
Yes. Tragically, you can. Yeah, imagine adding 400 years of technology onto that.
Right.
Next thing. So everybody else, this is their normal timeline. So Daniels isn't waking up on Voyager and going, wait a minute, I was working as a ship engineer.
No, this is the normal timeline for everyone now.
Yeah.
But why would Harry remember the other timeline? I guess because he was the one who caused it.
Yeah.
So he was right in the middle of it. He was in the eye of the storm. Him and Marlon Brando are the only ones who know what happened.
Yeah. Which, to me points more of the episode parallels.
Yeah, because Worf always knew he was in the wrong place. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But that too, I think Worf was the eye of the storm.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
So is this just an alternative Harry, which is even worse for Libby because now Harry's like gone?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But I can't help you with that problem. Well, then maybe Harry was replaced by the other Harry. I don't know. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, in that case, Tom's dead and Harry's just died in space.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's like the really dark way to look at it. No, I think this is the whole reason the aliens are there is because this is a weird anomaly that happened.
Yeah.
And they recognized that they were a part of it. So they were just trying to see if they could smooth out the edges. Turned out they couldn't.
Yeah. And then Harry had to actually go and fix it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a better explanation. That way there isn't a dead Harry floating in space and bits of Tom all over the solar system.
Oh, I have headcanoned my way to that story, yes.
And my final point, because I think we talked about Meyer analysis earlier.
Sure.
Why is this always happening to Harry?
Yeah. I don't know.
I never really put it together before, but he really is the Mars O'Brien of Voyager.
Yeah, he definitely is.
Some of my memory of Harry in Voyager is I always thought he was a character who wasn't really that well explored. And in this rebinging of it, I suddenly realized...
There's a lot of Harry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He is that character of, we need somebody kidnapped. Harry. We need someone stuck in a temporal loop. Harry. And these would be the things they would use Mars O'Brien for. It's nice to revisit and be pleasantly surprised.
Well, Harry is that person who represents Starfleet Or maybe what makes more sense is he
Yeah.
represents Star Trek on the show, where he's the innocent.
Yeah.
He's the one he's drunk all the Kool-Aid, right? He believes the hype. He believes in the whole thing.
He believes in Starfleet.
Exactly. He's the perfect Star Trek character, and there's always one of them. Miles wasn't that, though.
Yeah.
Miles was a weird sort of anomaly, but he was the one they persecuted.
But Miles did believe in it, because remember he makes the comment of saying he's not a perfect person, but he tries to be.
Oh, no, I'm not saying he wasn't, but he wasn't the epitome. He wasn't the archetype.
Yeah.
Harry's the archetype. Because remember that whole, the nonsense about Miles and the unions? But then also he had a real problem with Cardassians, so he wasn't that perfect. And again, I'm not saying Starfleet. I'm saying he wasn't the perfect Star Trek character.
I gotcha. Yeah. There was rougher edges with Miles because of his age and experience, whereas Harry is much more of the freshly minted Star Trek ensign.
Right. He came out of the cookie cutter, just like that. A little bit like early Geordi, I would say.
Oh, okay.
I imagine they thought that's what they were doing with Bashir on Deep Space Nine, but total failure. They actually made the opposite. The person who shouldn't have even been there.
Yeah, kind of a semi-dangerous stalker. And I think my final point, which was I was going to talk about Tom, but we already talked about Tom. So in that case...
Yeah, we covered Tom.
Over to you, Kim.
There's not a lot really to analyze, I guess.
Yeah.
But I have a couple points. My least favorite topic of stardates. Voyager disappeared on 48307, and now it's 49011, and I have no idea how those dates make any sense.
Oh, I'd have to go and look it up.
Somebody's going to send us an email. Somebody will send me an email and explain it.
I don't remember off the top of my head how that works.
It's either 2 months or 6 months or 8 months, based on this episode.
It's some number of months.
Some number of months.
Based on the number.
My next thing we talked about, which is that Harry's Voyager credentials should absolutely not have worked. It doesn't make any sense because they wouldn't have existed in this timeline.
Yeah.
Which is, I suppose, part of the confusion about, is this a parallel? Is this a different timeline?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe they just give them generic codes. The login is crew member 44, password is 1234.
Or ops officer 1234. So he's really using Danny's credentials.
Oh, yeah.
That could be, but again, that wouldn't make sense that it wouldn't be at all linked to any sort of biosignature or anything.
Yeah, I think maybe it's because the writing at the time was simply, name, password.
Yeah. I did find the time aliens to be quite funny.
Oh,
and we talked a little bit about it, but they're like, well, something went wrong, and now you're here. No biggie. But hey, your girlfriend's hot, so what are you complaining about?
Well, he's so weirdly upbeat and just sort of laughing about it as if you're telling a funny story. Oh, we blew up your entire timeline.
I do think they could have worked a little harder on that character and just explained it a little bit more about what he was doing there instead of sort of leaving it to our imagination. Like, you could have gotten rid of that stupid chase scene and spent just a few more minutes with this guy. It wouldn't have taken a lot. It almost feels like they didn't want to do that. Like, we don't have to explain it. Star Trek people will figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have a little bit more background, but I like the way the actor portrayed it and the way it was written and this sort of almost nonchalant attitude about it, I thought worked.
Yeah.
Of like, it's not really a big deal for us.
Yeah, it's a weak complaint. They were just a funny alien race, that's all. So the one last thing I had was, again, not an overanalysis, but just a question, which is, what would you do in this situation? Would you make the choice that Harry made?
Oh, yeah.
Did Harry make the right choice? Because he was living a pretty good life there.
That is true. But I think there's another side of it. Harry is also, and this comes back to, he's a true believer, Harry has loyalty to his shipmates. He doesn't know if Voyager wasn't destroyed and everyone was actually killed. And also the effects that could have on the Delta Quadrant if the Voyager did get through and, let's say, was taken by the Phage people or the Kazon. So I think for Harry, there's a level of, I have a duty to my captain and my ship, and that comes first. And being the true believer, Harry is going to grab hold of that and try and get back to his timeline. Harry's going to do this. It's his duty.
Maybe he's seen what Libby has turned into, just this woman walking around all day in her towel. And he's like, I gotta get out of here.
I ruined Libby's life.
Maybe she was a doctor in his timeline. Maybe she was in medical school.
Maybe she's like a really great geneticist or neural sciences researching engineer, and she's brilliant in her field. But she decided to put that on hold to stay in San Francisco and be with Harry.
Oh, and done like a sort of Picard where he didn't really live up to his potential in that episode.
Yeah, she's gone the opposite way of like, in this timeline, he has negative impacts on other people.
Yeah, that would have been a different episode.
Well, because then you would have had a whole issue of if Harry didn't do this, what happened to Libby?
Well, that to me is almost the more interesting story.
Yeah.
But we don't know. I think that's one of my criticisms if we look at women in the future is that the character of Libby is such a nothing burger in this episode.
Right.
They don't even give her a life. They give her nothing but a boyfriend. And that's always frustrating when you have characters like that. And you're supposed to really care about them. And it's like, come on.
Yeah.
In Janeway's leadership corner, the Admiral was a bit useless as usual. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't even at least entertain the idea that something was going on. But I think you made a good point about how if they're very focused on the Maquis problem at this point, it does make sense.
And I'll add to that, he did say he was meeting with the head of Starfleet security.
Oh, did he? Okay.
So maybe he'd had a briefing and changelings are everywhere. The Maquis has spies everywhere. The Cardassians are disguised as humans and are everywhere.
Yeah.
It's all a disaster. So he might have been in paranoia mode after that.
Maybe. Although that ankle bracelet's not going to do much for a changeling.
No, that's very true.
Yeah. Unless it has some sort of changeling dampening thing on it. But we've established that we didn't have any tools that we could use, except the one thing where we sweeped for him. But even that didn't seem to work all the time.
Yeah. And they were blowing up conferences.
Before this, yeah. Well, let's move on to rating.
Okay.
Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute thumbs up. This is almost up there, heading towards it, of the Mars O'Brien time travel episode.
Wow. That's high praise.
Well, maybe that's a little bit much, but I really enjoyed this episode. I am a total sucker for Star Trek, time travel,
yeah, me too.
potential parallels, different futures. I'm a sucker for all of that.
Yeah.
Absolute thumbs up. Harry was great. I could rewatch this episode. Possibly 2 thumbs up, because I did like it.
Well, the time travel stuff, it's one of the few things that is still truly science fiction.
Yes.
that we've no evidence that we're going to be able to do that, at least not in the way that it happens on the show. But I agree. I give it a thumbs up. I thought it was a fun episode. And I always like those stories where people wake up and they're in the wrong place.
Yes.
Those are some of my favorite. I've written stories like that. I really like that dynamic. I like starting that way.
Well, that's good that both of us seem to enjoy this episode and give it a thumbs up. This is showing the potential for Voyager.
Well, I don't think this episode is great. I think this episode is good. And it was enjoyable. I was going to say it's not memorable, but I did remember this episode. So maybe it is memorable. But
yeah, there you go.
I talked myself right out of my own point.
Yes, I'm taking this episode as great.
Okay, let's move on. That wraps up Season 2, Episode 5. Come back next week for Episode 6. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own over-analysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at rebingeit@gmail.com, or you can find us on the socials at rebingeit. We are on Threads, Instagram, that thing that used to be called Twitter, and YouTube. You can also connect with us on the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.